Welcome to Love Bite.
So this happened about 3 years ago, and I figured it would make a good revenge story. I met a guy while vacationing in California one summer. He was a really nice guy, and he always wanted to do something fun and different every day. From hiking, paintballing, swimming, or going out on the ocean. After the vacation ended, we kept in touch, and over the course of the next year, we decided I would move to California. I work in healthcare as a nurse, so getting a job almost anywhere isn't tough. Just as a new nurse, your hours are going to be shitty. No surprise, so after we've lived together for a few months and my hours have been terrible, they go back to normal hours and we can really spend more time together. I'm not really one to snoop around. He had a safe in the bedroom where we kept basic safe stuff like passports, SS cards, birth certificates, etc. One day I had to produce my birth certificate and had to go into the safe while he wasn't home. I found my birth certificate easily, but next to it was a birth certificate with an entirely different name and DOB than what his was, so I asked him about it, and he got super defensive and yelled at me for snooping. It's totally out of character for him, as I've never seen him yell before. I still wanted to know WTF, and based on his reaction and the fact that I moved to a different state to be with him, I deserved to know if he was hiding anything. A few days later, he finally tells me the truth. He used to be married and had twins. This caught me off guard, because normally you tell someone you are in a relationship with if you have kids. That doesn't bother me as much as him using a different name than what his real name is. So he decides this is the time to be totally honest with me and tells me he doesn't want to pay child support or alimony because she was cheating on him, but he couldn't prove it in court, and he believed the kids weren't his, even though he also admitted they did a paternity test and he's the father. So he simply started using his old friend's name and information that he, for some reason, had after they were college roommates. So many red flags are now flying. Why did he have his roommate's birth certificate and social? He never did answer that, and Googling the name never did turn anything up. Then he decided to admit he's been cheating on me ever since I moved out here since we are being honest, and he finally could share his life with someone. WTF. So I moved out that very night to sleep on another nurse's couch. He, however, refused to leave me alone and eventually started to threaten me over the phone. Big mistake. You just admitted to skipping out on child support, alimony, court orders, and identity theft. I started looking up his hometown and state, one thing he didn't seem to lie about, and found public records of his divorce and tracked down his ex-wife on Facebook. After she finally responded, about a week later, she confirmed from pictures that it was him and was really interested in knowing where he was. It turns out he not only skipped out on child support and alimony, but he also stole her car years ago when he left and opened several credit cards in her name before he decided to leave town and was wanted for all of that. I mildly kept in touch with him, telling him I needed time to figure it all out before we could try again. About 2 months later, he was arrested, and proceedings began to get him transported back to his home state. He did call me from jail for about a week, but I refused to pay for the calls. He then had his attorney contact me, and I told his attorney that if he ever contacted me again, I'd call the cops for harassment. I then started searching his name and everything through his home state court access site and found out he was sentenced to 6 years for the credit cards, motor vehicle theft, theft of a firearm, and several contempt of court charges. I kept in contact with the ex-wife for a bit, and she was thankful they finally found him. Also, for a bit more on top, it turns out that once he gets out of prison in his home state, he will be arrested and charged for the stuff that they uncovered and figured out in California over the past few years. It turns out he also did a good amount of credit card fraud out there. So don't threaten to smash someone's face in for breaking up with you if you are committing identity theft and are on the run from child support. Story 1 ends here. Here is the second story title. The stalker boss ends up regretting it. I've just discovered the sub, and I have the perfect story for it. It won't be a long one because it happened about 4 years ago, and I'm fuzzy on the exact details, but it's still a belter. I used to work in a convenience store, and the store manager was a real prick. Misogynistic, offensive, as in, haha, cancer is hilarious, creepy, and a downright bully. Sometime after I left, He was fired after he decided to turn a professional interview with a young woman into a conversation about her favorite porn. She reported him, and he got the sack. Awesome. Anyway, this guy, we'll call him Andy, fancied himself as a real leader. I mean, he wasn't. He set impossible tasks and yelled instructions while doing absolutely nothing in the office in the meantime. I had a colleague called Gabby who, to be honest, I didn't get along with. However, I knew that at the time she was having a really tough time at home with her 3-month-old son. One day in the winter, it snowed. Fairly heavily. Gabby rang in that morning and told Andy she couldn't make it in as she was snowed in. Everybody knew that wouldn't have been true and that it was likely she hadn't slept well with the baby crying and whatnot. But you know what? Who cares? She always worked hard, and she deserved a break. It was only a 4-hour shift, and the store was dead anyway. No customers were going to walk over snow and ice for the morning paper. Plus, we were actually overstaffed. However, Andy had a problem with women. He was always disrespectful and demeaning. Like the rest of us, he knew she wouldn't be snowed in, but he didn't let it lie. He wanted to catch her out. Andy abandoned the store, serious gross misconduct, and got in his car. He made the 15-minute drive all the way to Gab's house and took pictures of her car, her front driveway, and the rest of the street to prove she wasn't snowed in. He then called her into the office at the end of the week for a disciplinary hearing. When she came out, she was in tears. She was on a final warning. Andy wouldn't want a dismissal on his quarterly record, so he basically just threatened her instead. This didn't sit well with anyone. We hated him anyway, but he went too far, making a single mom cry over something so ridiculous. Well, here's the good part. What Andy didn't realize was that on the last work night out, he drunkenly revealed to the team that he was a serial cheat. He would regularly cheat on his wife of 18 years. He also has 2 teenage sons. He would justify it as having natural male hunger, if you've ever heard a more disturbing quote. Andy used to tell his wife that one evening he finished at 2,300 hours. This was a lie. He never worked later than 2,100 hours. After an evening shift, he'd go and fuck whichever side piece he had going at the time. Well, one evening, he finished at 2,100 hours, and he got in his car and started driving. What he didn't realize was that Gab, who wasn't on shift that day, had dropped her son at her mom's house and had waited outside the store in her car for Andy to leave. She tailed his car all the way to his hookup house and parked 3 houses down. She then proceeded to take pictures of Andy hugging and kissing this random woman before pulling her inside and slamming the door. You can see where this is going. Andy didn't come into work for a week. When we saw him next, he looked broken. His wife had been anonymously sent pictures of him getting off with another woman. She'd kicked him out and had contacted a solicitor to start a divorce process. His sons had blocked his number and wanted nothing to do with him. Of course, he knew who sent the pictures. But he had no proof, no evidence. Gabby stayed at the store for another 3 months before moving into a recruitment position for a pharmaceutical company. As far as I know, she's still there today and doing well. As for Andy, I have no idea whether the divorce went through or not. I blocked him on all social media after I left the company, about a month after this whole thing. What I do know is that he's a disgusting, reprehensible human being who thought he was invincible. He thought he could walk all over people, bullying and belittling them as he went. Well, he soon realized that nobody is invincible, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching his collapse. End.